Hi Guava Bees, and welcome to another episode of the Dear Guava Bean podcast. Remember, submit your questions in the sandbox or on the website and we could be answering yours in the next episode. I'm Francesca and with me is Claire.
Hello.
And today's question is, Dear Guava Bean, I just took a break from teaching, now thinking about other options. For ex-teachers, are their jobs suitable for online or nomadic style other than online tutoring, which I've already researched? This is an interesting one because I'm seeing a lot more people wanting to explore online teaching. I don't know whether this is something you've noticed, Claire, but I certainly have.
Yeah, online teaching is a big category for digital nomads. It's definitely a pretty easy job to get into if you already you speak English as a native language, if you have any experience as a teacher, like he said, just took a break from teaching. So if you already have experience, it's pretty, I don't want to say it's easy, but there's a lot of demand for online teachers nowadays. But what he's asking here is, are there any other jobs other than online tutoring? And so this is something that I have researched because when I started, I was also a teacher. Like I had been teaching for a while and I just wasn't really happy with the school and, just with the options. I didn't really see a future. It wasn't challenging enough. And so I wanted to take a break and to try out online work. And that's kind of how I got started. And the first job I got was copywriting. It was for a copywriting agency that was creating blog posts for different companies. And I would write random blog posts, but like totally random stuff that I knew nothing about. It was really strange, but that was one way to get started. If you teach, then you probably have at least decent writing skills. You can at least proofread and edit, which is the second job that I got as a proofreader and editor. I got some work on Freelancer proofreading novels. And I used my online teaching experience to get those jobs. I mentioned that I had been teaching for a while. So you could definitely cross over some of that experience. It depends what you were teaching. I was already teaching English, so it was not too difficult to say, like, I could also proofread and edit. But I would say copywriting is probably an easy alternative to get into. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating learning about your kind of transition from teaching into, your freelancing career and the things that you tried, because I personally have never been in the teaching industry. So I guess I'm looking at it from a completely different point of view. So automatically, when I saw this question and I was sitting thinking about it, I was thinking, what kind of skills and qualities and things would a teacher have that you could apply? And obviously, you've mentioned here that kind of academic side, the proofreading, editing, writing, all those kind of skills would actually work really well and transition really well. And I guess from my point of view, I was being a bit more simplistic and I was thinking, well, what other methods could you use to teach people that aren't necessarily like logging in at certain times and tutoring people? And I kind of thought about maybe you could, and now this is probably a lot of work for the long term, but potentially creating course materials or maybe even your own course using the knowledge of maybe any industries you might have worked in or the type of teaching that you did before. If it's something that you're used to doing, preparing sort of teaching materials and lesson plans and things like that, then I think that would move quite nicely over to creating courses. I mean, obviously, I know that is a bit different because it's not necessarily an active income. Creating courses can often be quite passive and take a lot of work. So maybe, although courses are very popular online, if you're teaching something that people don't have access to, or you're teaching it in a different way which people find appealing, even though it would be really valuable, it can take quite a long time to build up an income. So my other thoughts were, how could you apply sort of that helping element, that supportive element that a teacher would offer? And actually, I kind of thought about maybe community management. And now that might sound a little bit strange, but I personally, as I said, have never been a teacher. But when I moved more into community management, I found I really enjoyed the element of actually creating content that taught people how to do things. And it's quite rewarding in the same way that I imagine it being a teacher would be. So maybe you could look into community management. If you're not quite sure what that is, it's basically just overseeing an online community, creating content that they find helpful, answering questions, making things clearer that maybe aren't so clear, and obviously teaching people how to use a service or a product and that kind of thing. So that's my take on it as well. I think it kind of depends on what kind of teacher you've been as well.
Yeah, that community manager one is interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's true. That would transition quite nicely. And nowadays, a lot of business owners have their own Facebook group. They're trying to build a community. If you become an expert in growing communities or managing communities or creating content for communities, that's a good niche that you could get into. There's a lot of demand for that nowadays. And I know a lot of people who have Facebook groups but don't know what to do with them. They want more engagement, but they don't know how to engage. So if you have experience, doing activities or creating challenges or creating content that gets people to engage, you could find a way to transition. That is quite interesting. Another alternative job you could look into is coaching. Depending on how experienced you were as a teacher, you could potentially coach other people who want to be teachers. If you, like, let's say you were a music teacher, for example, you could coach other people who wanted to be music teachers. And then, like Francesca said, you can also create courses and content. You could even create your own teaching videos and have like a little membership where people pay for access to your teaching videos, or you can sell the videos for like $10 or $20 each. You can create, I know quite a few people who do that. They put together a really great 1-hour workshop, which is essentially just a video of you teaching on a specific subject. And then you sell that for a really nice, easy price, like $20 or $30, something that's very affordable. And that's one way. It's not exactly a job. It's more of like creating your own little business. So if you were looking for a job, then, this is something that you would have to ease into probably. But you could start looking for other people who were ex-teachers and then became freelancers and see what they did, what type of jobs they found. I'm just thinking of what else could be a good transitioning career.
I quite like the idea of combining, because so we've got the courses and then you mentioned coaching. Well, you can combine them and do both. I mean, if you want a mixture of both active and passive income, which again, I'm seeing a lot more of. It's a lot more popular now that people want to be creating passive income streams, especially if you're doing something like traveling. I know you mentioned the nomading lifestyle, so I'm assuming you want to be visiting different places potentially. So you can't always be like online at a certain time. That doesn't often work very well with digital nomading, but you could definitely look at, like you've mentioned, creating a membership to access certain course materials, but also offering maybe one-on-one sessions or even group sessions with people. So you could do like Q&As, for a certain price and do that kind of membership. There are lots of ways that you could combine some of the things that we've mentioned here. Back to community management. It doesn't have to be your own community. It could be another person's community, another client's community, or both. I think really it's one of those things where it depends what kind of teaching you've done, and it depends what you want out of your career. Because I know that you mentioned, Claire, about the, offering like access to videos or teaching people how to do things with your own materials. That's a different kind of business as to if you were to then find clients to work for. So it really, I think it depends on what you're wanting to get out of your career.
Yeah, I think if you're just getting started and you haven't worked online before, then you would probably start working for someone else, learning how to do a service or a skill. So finding a job where, you can transfer your teaching skills either like as a community manager, a copywriter, content creator, anything that you can do to just get your foot into the online workspace. And then once you're in there, then you can kind of see what there is demand for, what the options are, and you'll find a lot more ideas once you get started.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the easiest way to make money if you're new to it is active income, which means working, exchanging time for money. So passive income is something you can look at later, maybe. Like you said, you took the words out of my mouth, because I was going to say another benefit for working with clients is actually finding out about new industries or new types of work you might not have considered. So maybe that's an important step, even if you want to maybe look at opening your, or starting your own business and creating your own things. It can actually be an important step to work for others, because it can open your eyes a lot, I think, to the types of work that are available, but also what you like and what you don't like. It's kind of hard to say when you're new, isn't it, about what you do and don't like without actually having done it yet, especially if you're, looking and you've been a teacher and you're now looking to apply that to something else. It can be quite tricky. I agree with you. I think finding clients is probably the best thing to do. Now, obviously, as I've said before, I've never looked into online teaching. It's not something I'm familiar with, but you said that it's something that you looked into and then you moved into copywriting. Now, is it something that people can find on things like Upwork? Is it something that you can potentially sort of reach out to clients like a cold pitch? Because this is like new territory for me. It's not something that I've ever done.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, no, you cannot usually find these types of jobs on Upwork. And I don't think cold pitching, until you have like a good reputation, I don't think that would work. Most of these jobs come from websites like Dada or ABC Cafe. There's like certain very large companies. A lot of them are Asian. There's a lot of Chinese-based companies, and they have all the students. So it's kind of like a job platform where you sign up with them, you go through their approval process. Once they approve you to be a teacher, usually you have to do a demo teaching, you have to meet all the requirements. And then once you get accepted, then it's kind of like they match you up with students. You can choose the students, the students themselves can book in on your calendar. You have certain requirements that you need to meet, and you get paid through the company. So you don't get paid directly from the clients.
Okay, that makes sense. I have a friend that actually, she lives in Canada, but she teaches online to South Korean students. And I just was really curious, because it's something that, as I said, I've never done before. I can maybe understand why, it's quite difficult, initially to get in the door, but I can definitely see why there's a big demand. Do you think that's because sort of technology and things are so easily accessible now that this is people's preferred method of teaching? Because often it's sort of English teaching, isn't it, to English as a second language and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the biggest demand is definitely for English teaching. I think that this kind of service makes it possible for people to get the education that they would normally have to pay a lot of money or have a very hard time finding without this service. Like if you were, let's say, living in like a small city in Asia, in some Asian country, it would be very difficult for you to find a good English teacher who could spend an hour with you, and teach you exactly what you needed to know. So it's meeting a demand that is already there. There's a huge demand in Asia for English teachers. And so these companies are filling that demand by connecting the teachers to the students and then taking a cut, kind of like what Upwork does. They connect the freelancers to the employers and they take a cut. It's like that, but the downside is similar to Upwork. It's hard to take those clients off the website and then create your own client base. That's the problem, is that you're always kind of tied to that company and to the rates that they give you, and you can't set your own rates. You can't really set your own schedule and stuff. So there are lots of limitations.
Yeah, so I see it's more like being almost like a remote employee, even if you're self-employed. I'm really curious because obviously, if it's often teaching English as a second language, I wonder whether those skills might transfer as maybe a translator or something like that, maybe for businesses. Translating documents, again, that might come into like the proofreading and editing and maybe combine those skills together. That might be worth thinking about.
Yeah, that's definitely one. And, if you like teaching on camera, you can also think about creating a YouTube channel. That's something that you can just grow on the side, have that content out there. So when people search for you, they see videos of you teaching. If you wanted to stay in, the teaching niche, I find that it's easier to use what you know to get your next job, and then from there you can go to whatever. I started in copywriting, and then I moved into proofreading and editing, and then I moved into being a virtual assistant, and then I moved into social media, and then I moved into project management. So I moved a lot of times into different careers, and all you really need to know is just to get that first job enough. And then from there, that experience, you can transfer it into something completely different. I ended up in something totally different from teaching. So I fully expect that once you get started and once you get your first job, that you'll see the other opportunities that are around, and you'll get a chance to explore what you actually like to do, and you'll find the right niche or career for you, but you kind of just need to get started with what you know.
Yeah, so exactly what I was talking about in a previous episode about kind of bridging the gap with the knowledge that you have. I do think it's better to start with what you know as well. I 100% agree, and it sounds to me like we've followed not similar careers because we do something quite different, but you kind of use what you know and then you evolve your career, don't you? And you kind of move through different types of clients, different types of work, and then kind of figure out what you do and don't like. I think it's a great idea to think of how transferable your skills are. But you can also, again, we've talked about it before, but maybe look at ways you can enhance your current skills with online courses and tutorials and things, and even events if they've got them in your area. They can be so helpful at teaching you new skills. You can often learn a lot from people as well if you're in online communities, and just kind of take advice from people that may already be in a career that you might like to move into. I think it all helps. I don't think, again, there is one way of doing something. A lot of it is going to be trial and error and figuring out what you want to do. But I think there's, from both of our points of view, which are quite different, we've come up with quite a few ideas, actually, I think, that online teaching could easily transfer to. So I'm quite excited that that isn't just, you don't just have to stick with like online tutoring if you've been a teacher. It's just about kind of looking at other options that you could potentially look into.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to answer the question, are there jobs suitable other than online teaching? Yes, definitely. And I can say that because I've done it. I found jobs that were suitable for me that were not at all related to teaching. So it's definitely possible. You just have to be creative a little bit. And I would say try a couple things at the same time. Don't just commit to one thing because you don't know if that's going to work for you yet. I started copywriting and proofreading and editing, and having like a range of those different jobs gave me an opportunity to see what different jobs felt like. And that's the nice thing about freelancing. You can try on other jobs without having to commit to being in this job for a year. So you can try community management, you can try proofreading and editing, you can try copywriting, you can try creating your own courses and videos and seeing how that works. You can try several different things, and then one of those things is going to click, and you just go down that road and follow it until you find the next thing that clicks. And then eventually you'll find your niche, and it might be something totally different from teaching. But one day someone will be able to ask you this question. And I think that if you've gone through these steps, and the answer will definitely be yes, there's so many opportunities for teachers to work online.
We hope this episode has given you some food for thought and helpful advice on what to do next if you're struggling with the same issue. Now it's your turn. We want to hear from you. If you have a question and want us to discuss it on a future episode, ask us in the sandbox, on the website, or using the form in our podcast email. It only takes a minute, and if we choose yours, we'll send you a free guava bean mug as a thank you, so you can enjoy your favourite drink while listening to the show. For now, that's all from us. Until next time, keep working online and living free.
Want to know more about the Freelancer Sandbox? Visit guavabean.com/sandbox to start your free trial now.